Let's take a journey today, and not just any trip. We're going to places that most of us may never even think of visiting. These places are off the grid, not just because they want to be, but because nature and geography have made sure they're not easily reachable. It's fascinating, isn't it? What drives people or animals to live in such far-flung areas? Maybe the quiet, or maybe it's just how life turned out for them. Whatever the reason, these places exist. And today we'll dive into inside the world's most inaccessible and isolated places. Be careful, guys, you cannot escape. Devon Island. First stop, Canada's Devon Island, known locally as Talu-Rutit. This isn't your average island getaway. It's the largest uninhabited island in the world, but there's something even more curious about it. NASA has been using this cold, rocky place as a stand-in for Mars for over 2 decades. For 5 seconds, just imagine a place so barren and harsh that scientists thought, yep, this is about as close to Mars as we can get. They've been running simulations here, testing out spacesuits, robots, and other gear since the 1990s. With its 12.5-mile wide, 23-million-year-old meteorite impact crater, Devon Island is practically out of this world. But don't think it's completely isolated. You're about 50 miles from the nearest civilization, a tiny community of 200 on Cornwallis Island. Not exactly next door, but close enough if you need a bit of company. Still, if you're craving isolation, this place delivers. Cold, remote, and otherworldly. That's Devon Island for you. Tristan da Cunha. Now, if Devon Island is Mars, Tristan da Cunha is the place for those who still want some human contact, just not too much. Sitting smack dab in the South Atlantic Ocean, it's the most remote inhabited island on Earth. It's 1,750 miles from the nearest mainland city, Cape Town in South Africa. With only 238 residents as of 2024, Tristan da Cunha is a tiny, tight-knit community. They live on subsistence farming and fishing, and believe it or not, selling stamps. That's right, stamps from this remote island are pretty sought after by collectors. Do you know a fun fact? In there, outsiders aren't allowed to buy property. Everything is communally owned, keeping the small island vibe alive. And if you're thinking of dropping in for a visit, don't bother booking a flight. There's no airport here. The only way to get to Tristan da Cunha is by boat from South Africa, which takes a whopping 6 days. That's isolation at its finest. Pitcairn Islands. Let's head to the southern Pacific now, to a group of volcanic islands known as the Pitcairn Islands. There are 4 islands, but only one is inhabited, the tiny Pitcairn Island. This place has a wild history. The people here are descended from the mutineers of the infamous HMAV Bounty. Yes, the same Bounty from the movie and countless books. After the mutiny, the crew and their Tahitian companions settled here in 1790, and their descendants have lived on this 2-square-mile island ever since. But it hasn't been all smooth sailing. A child abuse scandal in the early 2000s destroyed the population, which has since decreased to about 50 people. The government even started giving away free land to attract new settlers, but so far, no one's biting. If you're looking for a place to disappear, Pitcairn Island is waiting. Easter Island. Who hasn't heard of Easter Island? It's famous for its massive stone heads called moai, but there's so much more to this isolated land. Sitting over 2,000 miles off the coast of Chile, Easter Island is one of the most remote inhabited places in the world. Yet despite its isolation, the island's history is rich and fascinating. The Rapa Nui people carved and erected 887 of these massive statues between 1250 and 1500. That's some serious dedication, especially when you consider they did it without any modern tools or machinery. While it's no longer entirely cut off from the rest of the world, Easter Island still feels remote. It's home to fewer than 8,000 people today, and its closest neighbor is 1,200 miles away. If you ever want to lose yourself in history while standing on one of the most remote spots on Earth, Easter Island is calling your name. Kerguelen Islands. Next up is the Kerguelen Islands, also known as the Desolation Islands. And trust me, the name fits. These islands are located more than 2,000 miles away from the nearest inhabited area. No one lives here full-time, but a rotating group of scientists and researchers call it home for short periods of time. With its glaciers and volcanic peaks, Kerguelen offers an isolated beauty that's tough to find anywhere else. Port-au-Français is the only settlement on the island, but don't expect a bustling town. The population ranges from 50 people in the winter to about 100 in the summer. The only way to get there is on a ship that leaves 4 times a year, so plan your visit carefully. Inaccessible. Let's jump to Greenland now, to a place called Inaccessible. Try saying that 3 times fast. This is one of the most remote settlements on Earth, located in a corner of Greenland surrounded by hundreds of miles of nothingness. With just 450 residents, Inaccessible is a small but tough community that braves 9 months of ice and snow every year. They're nestled between Greenland's massive national park and the world's largest fjord, Scoresby Sound. Life here is quiet, but there's no shortage of wildlife. Polar bears, muskoxen, seals, and whales make regular appearances, and if you're lucky, you might spot them while enjoying a pint at the local pub, which opens 1 night a week. Getting here is tricky. You'll need to catch a helicopter or boat, depending on the season. Oymyakon. If you think the winters where you live are cold, let's head to Oymyakon, Russia. This Siberian village holds the record for the coldest inhabited place on Earth. How cold? Try -90 Fahrenheit degrees. That's the temperature recorded here on February 6, 1933, and it hasn't gotten much warmer since. The 500 residents of Oymyakon have mastered the art of surviving in the frozen wilderness, eating a diet rich in reindeer and horse milk, and living in houses designed to withstand the brutal cold. What's fascinating is that the daylight here is just as extreme as the cold. In winter, the sun is up for only 3 hours a day, but in summer, it shines for 21 hours straight. Talk about a land of extremes. The Changtang. High above the rest of the world lies the Changtang, a remote region on the Tibetan Plateau. Named the Roof of the World, this area rises to more than 13,000 feet above sea level, making it one of the highest inhabited regions on Earth. Life here is challenging, to say the least. The summers are short, the winters are brutal, and the weather can turn on a dime with thunderstorms and hail. But for the few 100,000 nomads who live here, known as the Changpa, it's home. They share the land with rare wildlife like snow leopards, wild yaks, and the endangered Tibetan antelope. Most of the region is protected under the Changtang Nature Reserve, so it remains a pristine wilderness, untouched by the modern world. Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. If you want to experience the ultimate in isolation, look no further than the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station in Antarctica. Built in 1956, this research station sits 9,000 feet above sea level on a massive ice sheet. It's so remote that the South Pole only experiences 1 day and 1 night per year, each lasting 6 months. With temperatures plunging to -90 degrees Celsius, it's one of the coldest places on Earth. The station is home to a small community of scientists, ranging from 50 to 200 people depending on the season. They live and work here, conducting research on everything from climate change to astrophysics. It's not a place for the faint-hearted, but if you're up for the challenge, it offers one of the most unique living experiences on the planet. Villa Las Estrellas. Last but not least, we find ourselves in Villa Las Estrellas, a Chilean colony in Antarctica. It's one of only 2 civilian communities on the entire continent, with fewer than 200 people calling it home. The settlement was established in 1984 and is mostly inhabited by scientists and military personnel. It has a school, a post office, and even a gym, but don't expect a bustling social scene. The nearest hospital is 600 miles away, so residents are required to have their appendixes removed before they arrive. So that's the wrap-up. These places remind us that the world is much bigger and more varied than we can imagine. Would you ever consider visiting one of these spots? Which was your favorite? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and hit that subscribe button for more amazing journeys.